Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, Namanda, Namanda. Well, good morning and welcome to everyone who is joining us for our Sunday morning family service for Vista Buddhist Temple and Orange County Buddhist Church. Today is January 31st, 2021, and I am Reverend Ellen Hamada Crane. Very happy to be conducting the service for you today, and I hope you will find something meaningful from this service. Very happy to know that we are making some headway with the pandemic. I understand some people are getting vaccinated now, and hopefully more of us will as time goes on. And hopefully we will have enough people vaccinated that we can all get together again back at OCBC and at VBT. Would really like to see that happening. All right, to begin, I will explain the order of service for this morning. We will begin with Shin Buddhist Life Principles on page 9. Hopefully all of you have our service book, and you can refer to the items that we will be doing throughout the service from this book. As we mentioned, Shin Buddhist Life Principles will be on page 9. Following that, we will be doing the Junidai chanting, which is on pages 49 in English and 53 in Japanese. After that will be the Dharma talk, followed by a musical offering, and then we will have some announcements, and that will be our service today. So let's begin with our Shin Buddhist Life Principles. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu. Please follow along with me. Shin Buddhist Life Principles. In trusting in the vow of the Buddha, calling out the Buddha's name, I will pass through the journey of life with strength and joy. Revering the light of the Buddha, reflecting upon my imperfect self, I will strive to live a life of gratitude. Following the teachings of the Buddha, discerning the right path, I will share the true Dharma with all. Rejoicing in the compassion of the Buddha, respecting and aiding all sentient beings, I will work towards the welfare of society and the world. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda, Namanda, Namanda. Next, we will go into our chanting. As I mentioned, we will be doing the Junirai on pages 49 and 53. And a little bit about the Junirai. It's a very ancient chant. It was written probably in the 2nd century of the Common Era. And it originated in the Mahayana tradition of India during the time of the Pure Land Master Nagarjuna. He was one of our 7 masters. So we are, when we chant this, following a tradition that has gone on for almost 2,000 years. Let's begin. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Keshu Tennin Shokugyo Amida Senryo Sokuson Zaihi Mimeu Andako Muryo Bushi Shuineu Konjiki Shinjo Nyo Senno Shama Tagyo Nyozobu Ryomoku Jonyaku Shorenge Koga Chorai Midason Menzen Enjo Nyomangat Iko Yunyo Sen Nichigat Shonyo Tenku Kushira Koga Chorai Midason Kannon Chodai Kanchiuju Shuju Meuso Shogun Nobukugedo Makelman Koga Chorai Midason Mibu Muku Koshojo Shutoku Keuken Yokoku Shosari Yaku Toku Jizai Koga Chorai Midason Jippo Myomon Bosashu Muryo Shoma Josandan Isho Shujo Gandikiju Koga Chorai Midason Kontai Hoken Chishoke Zengon Shoujo Meudaiza Ohiza Jonyo Senno Koga Chorai Midason Jippo Shorai Shobushi Kengen Jinzu Shiandak Sengo 尊厳上苦行古が将来みだ尊小無常無我と薬尿水眼伝よろ一種説法無名字古が将来みだ尊異尊無戦無悪名薬無女人悪道夫修人死心教異尊古が将来みだ尊非尊無量勉強無少種悪知識往生不退死菩提古が将来みだ尊河川非尊功徳寺修善無変妖怪水小逆前言小上者衛生修上小非公ナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブ管理し功徳平等性一切道本無大心往生安楽ナマンダブツ、ナマンダブツ、ナマンダブツ、ナマンダブツ、ナマンダブツ。The title of my Dharma talk today is called The Gratitude Reflex, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about how this came about. During the pandemic, my husband Tom and I have been listening to many different podcasts. It's one of the things that you can do these days when you have so much time on your hands. And we've actually always enjoyed listening to them, but we found a few that we have really gotten very engaged with. And one of them happens to be NPR's Hidden Brain podcast. It's hosted by a man named Shankar Vedantam. He is the social science correspondent for NPR. And he takes human behavior and the social sciences research and looks at them in very interesting and unusual ways, in ways that we maybe wouldn't be thinking about them. And so it's fascinating to kind of uncover various aspects of the brain and the way we think and the way we act. This is an extremely popular podcast. There are over 2 million downloads a week. Everyday Buddhists would love something like that happening with our online school. There are over 250 public radio stations across the United States that feature this podcast. So well worth listening to, and I highly recommend it. Anyway, a while back, there was an episode entitled Where Gratitude Gets You. So Jodi Shinshu, we talk a lot about gratitude. This title immediately caught my attention. I thought there might be some interesting nuggets that we could relate to, and indeed there were. And so I hope to share some of what I learned from the podcast with you. So what he did was interviewed a Dr. David DeSteno from Northwestern University in the Boston area, who's a psychologist who has done a lot of research in the emotional side of human behavior. So he wrote a book called Emotional Success: The Power of Gratitude, Compassion, and Pride. So there's a lot of information in there. Of course, we can immediately relate to gratitude and compassion. Today, we'll focus mostly on the gratitude aspect. So they asked the question, why is it so hard to do the right thing? And he also discusses the importance and the limitations of willpower and self-control, which are both related to that question. He also explores a habit, a very easy habit that helps us achieve our goals and isn't related to willpower and self-control. And of course, that is the practice of gratitude. So we'll see how powerful that practice can be. So they asked the question, can you do the difficult thing now for a reward in the future? Because future success often requires sacrificing in the short term for benefits. Giving in to temptation for immediate gratification can sometimes lead to problems down the road. We all know that. We've all experienced that. You're familiar with the Aesop's fable of the grasshopper and the ant. And we all know about the ant who was very diligent during the spring and summer months, collecting food for the winter, working very hard to store up his supplies. And we know about the lazy grasshopper who lazed and danced and sang and had a great time while food was plenty. And when winter came, he had no reserves. He had nothing stored up, and he perished because of that. Rather harsh moral to that story. But the point being, you have to work hard sometimes in the present for future rewards. And that's exactly what happened in that story. We also heard from Reverend John a couple of weeks ago about the power of personality and how stable it might be or unchangeable it is or isn't. And he mentioned something called the marshmallow test that was conducted by Walter Mischel. This is a very famous test that many of you are familiar with. It took place at Stanford University many years ago, where he took a group of children and placed them in a room one by one and gave them a marshmallow. And then told them, I'm going to walk out of this room. If you don't eat the marshmallow, when I come back, I will give you 2 marshmallows. So it was a test on specific children's ability to delay gratification, to get 2 in the future or 1 presently. So in Dr. DeSteno's discussion, he used it as an example of delayed gratification. I think Reverend John used it more in terms of personality issues. Well, what Dr. DeSteno did is a somewhat similar experiment using adults. And he didn't use marshmallows, but he used money. He figured adults were more inclined to want money than marshmallows. And so what he did in his experiment was that he told his subjects that in the future, in a year's time, I will give you $100, or you can get a certain amount of cash today in lieu of the $100 in a year. And what he found after working with many, many different subjects, that the amount was $17, which I found surprising, that to wait a year for $100, most people on average would take $17 today. We'll come back to that experiment later on in my talk because he gives it a little bit of a twist. So what's going on in here? Or what's going on here? Oftentimes people characterize this as a war between different parts of our brain. You know, oftentimes we talk about the rational brain versus the emotional brain, and they are sometimes pitted against each other. You know, we think of our rational brain coming from our frontal cortex, and our emotional brain is from a more primitive part of our brain, the amygdala, where we have more instinctual types of urges and wants and needs. And so sometimes we feel like they are at opposite ends or purposes. We face questions like, do I study now or play a video game? Do I exercise or sit in front of the TV? Do I save for retirement or buy that fancy new car or gigantic TV? Those are all questions that on the one hand, we know are the rational executive part of our brains will tell us, oh, we need to do the right thing and not give in to our impulses. So in these situations, our emotions can lead us astray. And we think that the way to reach our goals is to persevere and delay gratification and resist temptation by relying on willpower. Well, it turns out the reality of willpower is it's not a very good mechanism for doing what we should. Dr. DeSteno says that most of us actually don't do very well with our willpower. Statistically, 20% of the time, people give in, and this is for, you know, minor kind of decisions. And the numbers get worse for difficult or important decisions. Another example is that New Year's resolutions, 25% are gone by January, mid-January, and that 8% are kept to the end of the year. So this strategy of relying on logic and willpower doesn't work all that well in many cases. We think willpower and self-control is important, and we all can function or be successful if we are able to do that. But it's hard. And we face many of those decisions in our lives. We think willpower as being the key to self-control, and that our emotions are the things that undermine us. But Dr. DeSteno disagrees because he feels that this model misses something very crucial. There are negative emotions that sabotage our efforts to do the right thing or to do what we should. But he also says that emotions can be enormously powerful and constructive and help with self-control. And so he proceeds to explain how that is. As part of the problem comes from the fact that a lot of research has been focused on the negative emotions, things like fear, anger, anxiety. And in Buddhism, of course, we are very aware of the three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance. We are constantly made aware of the ego self and its wants and needs, and that as Bombu, foolish beings, our desires are endless. No wonder willpower fails us so often. But we also see that the necessity of willpower in self-control has its limitations, as we've already learned. So he asks, what if there is another way to accomplish the things we want and not have to rely so much on willpower or self-control? And Dr. Desteno came to the conclusion that we can look to other emotions for an answer. So in his book, mentioned previously, Emotional Success, The Power of Gratitude, Compassion, and Pride, he found some answers. And today, as I mentioned, we will focus primarily on the gratitude aspect. He says that some emotions help us reach our goals. And so he talks about how emotions can shape and control long-term decision-making. And specifically, he tested differences in people in the way that they were experiencing the emotion of gratitude and what effect that would have on willpower and self-control and delayed gratification. So he found that there was a correlation between gratitude and people's willingness and ability to delay gratification and to maintain some self-control. Turns out that when people are feeling grateful, they double their ability to exert self-control. And so this is how he was able to determine that in an experiment. So let's go back to that $100 in a year test. And what he did was he tweaked it by putting in a new element into the equation. So he offered people $100 in a year from now, and found or set out to determine what amount would it take for them to forego the $100 and take the money today if they were experiencing gratitude. So before they made their decision, he had his subjects recall a moment where they experienced a deep sense of gratitude. They reflected on something that someone had done or something that had happened in their lives for which they were extremely grateful for. And then they were asked to make that decision. How much would you take today to forego the $100 a year from now? Turns out that the amount it would take is almost double the $17. It takes $31 today to forego the $100 in the future, which means that people valued having the $100 in the future more because they had this sense of gratitude. It was a very profound result, in my opinion. So what he came to conclude was that gratitude altered the way people valued future goals, and they were more willing to delay their present gratification. And this was done effortlessly. It wasn't like, they went through any kind of different calculations. It was just that they felt that they'd be more willing to wait. And it would take more to get them to not wait. So there wasn't any need for them to exert self-control or other cognitive strategies. Pretty amazing. So there was another experiment that he did that I also thought was very interesting, in which he induced gratitude in his subjects. Very interesting experiment. He had a subject come in to take a like a very onerous test. It entailed something like 45 very difficult logic questions that they had to complete. And what he did is he had a confederate also in the room. There were supposedly two people doing the same task. They had to do this 45-minute onerous task test. And so with the subject, what happened to the subject person is that at the end of the test, their computer would crash and they would lose all the data. All the work that they had done in that 45 minutes was basically gone, and they were told they would have to do the test over. Well, the other confederate person who was supposedly taking the test would come over and say, well, you know, I'm pretty good with computers. Let me see if I could try to retrieve your information. And so that person would start fiddling with the buttons on the computer, and eventually they would push a certain button that would time for the answers to pop back up again. So the subject would feel enormous relief, enormous gratitude to this person for having saved their data and saved them from having to do this terrible test over again. And so what they found, and then there was another part to the test. So this very grateful person would leave the testing site, and in the lobby, there would be somebody who needed help, some help with something that they really looked like they were in distress. 95% of the people feeling gratitude would help the person in need, because they felt so much gratitude that they were willing to pay it forward and to help the person that appeared to be in need. Another very remarkable finding. Then he talked about another test that another psychologist did, where he basically, this other psychologist, I think it was Dr. Emmons, and I don't know where he was from, but he had people, his study people, do a daily gratitude reflection, basically counting your blessings daily. And what he found was that there was reduced stress in their lives. They were better able to exercise. They had a better quality in their relationships with the people around them, and fewer symptoms of illness. So this gratitude practice kind of led over into the well-being of their entire life. Gratitude changed and changes the things we value. And it's not like building a specific habit. Like you might try to develop a habit of, say, I don't know, going to bed at 10 o'clock at night or something, you know, some habit, some specific habit. And the problem with trying to build specific habits is that they are specific to whatever it is you are trying to alter. In the case of gratitude, it has a far and wide-reaching effect in many aspects of your life. It's sort of a one-size-fits-all kind of activity or practice that has wonderful and powerful consequences for the rest of your life. In many ways, we can kind of consider it a superpower that does affect many dimensions of your life. Gratitude changes what your mind values, and you value long-term more, among many other things. So these are the ways that a gratitude practice can have very practical benefits to your everyday life. Let's look briefly at what it means for our spiritual journey. As all of you probably know, gratitude is an incredibly important aspect to the Shin path, something that Shinran emphasized in a very special way. It is an essential aspect to the Shinjin awakening experience that he talked so much about and was the cornerstone of our Shin practice. As I've said many times, and I reflect the words of Reverend Tetsuo Uno when he says that gratitude can take you very far on the Shin Buddhist path, but it isn't enough by itself. There's an additional element, and that has to do with deep gratitude for Amita's Hongan, for the gift of awakening and transcendence that we received from all of reality, of all of life, of all of existence. And in that recognition of this power beyond the self, we feel a great sense of both humility and a great sense of appreciation and gratitude. I think we recognize that we are not worthy of the gifts that we receive. And from that comes this sense of inconceivable gratitude and tremendous humility in not being really truly worthy of receiving it. So hopefully this Dharma talk has shed some light on our Buddhist path, and that you can appreciate the importance that we place on gratitude in our practice. As I mentioned, it has powerful implications for our everyday life, but even more powerful implications for our journey to Shinjin. Please join me in Gasho, and thank you for joining me today. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. We will now have a musical offering performed by OCBC Dharma School student Jin Swan. He will be doing the Gatha Asa no Uta on page 99 of our service book. It's a song that has 4 verses, 2 in Japanese and 2 in English. Beautiful song. I was trying to figure out a way that I could join in the singing of the song, but it got technically too difficult to try to figure out. So just please enjoy the song and please sing. I miss hearing all of us singing together in the Hondo, and hopefully this is a way that you can participate in the musical offering as well. Asa no Uta, page 99. Thank you, Jin, for that beautiful rendition of Asanuta. I hope everyone enjoyed that. So now we will go to our announcements. We have 4. Since today is January 31st and the 5th Sunday of the month, there are no scheduled Dharma School classes unless one of the classes decided to have an extra class on their own. But otherwise, there should not be any Dharma School classes being held today. A reminder that next Saturday is our Shotsuki service. And although in the quoting it says that it will be shown at 4:30, it actually will be available from 10 o'clock. We figure that people could access the service whenever they want. And so it's being put up earlier. And that will be the practice going forward as long as we are in a remote and virtual situation. Also a reminder that next Sunday, Reverend Mutsumi Wondra will be doing the family service at 10 o'clock. Our last announcement has to do with our efforts to help our Sangha member, Paul Goodman, who is undergoing cancer treatment currently and is looking for bone marrow donations. And with respect to that, there has been a tremendous effort put into bone marrow drive to get samples that might be possible matches for him. I want to thank all of those who have participated in any of the 4 drive-through opportunities. There will be one today at OCBC starting at noon. And I hope that some of you will be able to participate in that. Today, even though this is the last event, there's also opportunities to do a contribution or to do a bone marrow test in your home. And there will be a couple of flyers following this announcement that will show how that can be done. A cheek swab for a bone marrow possible matching situation. Thank you to all those who have helped and participated in this drive. We're hoping that there will be some good news through all of our efforts. And we wish the good ones our sincerest best wishes. With that, I would like to close with Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandavats. Namandavats. Namandavats.